speakers. And in the afternoon session, and we're going to look into specific RE and EE effects for IV and to stuff for the dynamics. I was asked by the steering committee and to give a quick overview and introduction of the renewable energy track, because also take the role as chair for the RE track. So before we start session 2. And as you see the agenda, that's the renewable energy track. We have 6 sessions. And starting from today, this is the first session, and session 2, and tomorrow we'll have 3 sessions. And the last day we're going to have 2 sessions. So this is the renewable energy track, total 6. And you can see this is the feature we highlight for this year's the ASIC, and for renewable is innovations and in renewable. So why so? One of the reasons, I think we already heard a lot, that's the renewables over the past years have been dramatically become the steam and deployed on a large scale. So that means that we have facing emerging and some also the persisting the challenges. So in order to overcome, to address those challenges, come to a stage, we have to come more and more innovative thinking and solutions. So this is basically why we highlight the innovation for this year. And for 6 sessions, we are going to start with outlook, the renewable energy development outlook in the region. We're going to see, I will talk a little bit later on. This when I get introduced the session. And this is the first session. And once we set, the outlook, and we are going to move on to for the track, we're going to energy planning. And we can see that when scale up renewables, and to come to the point, of course, this point varies, depends on the context, depends on the countries. That's you have to think about longer term and how you plan the energy system rather than how you integrate renewables, variable renewables especially. So that's the reason why for that is if you plan from holistically and also long-term perspective, that can achieve much more cost-effective solutions. And the third session, then we're going to talk about with the renewable energy cost. So as we know, this cost reduced dramatically. So what does it mean to the policymakers, and what does it mean to the project developers? And what would you expect further the cost reduction over the next 10 or even longer period of times? And those costs, how can you translate it to the policy and technology and the financing schemes? That's just how they build this. That is the next session. What are innovations on technology and financing, and what kind of innovative schemes this is have been developed, and to further actually drive down the cost. This is making positive and feedback loop. So that's the next session is going to talk about business model, innovative business model for renewables, especially focusing on the value creation, and for renewables, and also for the enabling technology such as storage technologies. So basically, that's going to focus market. So if not ultimately the technology, the policies, but if there's not meeting in the marketplace, difficult to make it work, at least sustainably. And the last session under renewable energy track, which is going to take place on Friday, which is renewable energy in the transport sector. As we heard this morning, and over next till 2050, there's going to be 2 billion people, and added on the planet, and also the 2/3 of the population is going to stay in the urban settings. So the transportation is going to be a critical challenge for all of us. So how the renewable energy can play a role in that setting, and especially in the context of greenhouse gases reduction. Because right now, as we know, this is the transport sector contribute to about 1/4 of global emissions. So that's the basic overview of renewable energy track. And now I'm moving to this session. And the session 2, this is the outlook for renewable development in Asia. So from a regional and country perspective. So as we know, this Asia has been growing dramatically over the past years or decades, and it's predicted to continue the trend for next decades. So energy demand is increasing. So Asia is at crossroads. Where to go? How you can meet the energy demand? By what resources? There's debating still. But the decision made today is going to have huge impact on tomorrow's environment and the social development. So this is the reason why we're going to talk about what's the outlook for renewable, how that renewable can contribute to sustainability for the region. So do we have a crystal ball to see what's going to happen in the future? No, we don't. But we have good experts, we have knowledge about analyze what's going on, could happening in the next decade or more. Yes, we do. We have a fantastic group of experts here and with me, and so this is what we're going to talk about today. So the structure of the session 2 is as follows. We're going to have 3 presentations, and focusing more on the outlook presentation from 2021, and also from Irina's giving a roadmap, and also outlook for wind energy development in ASEAN. Once after the 3 presentations, we're joined by 3 additional panelists. So we can have a panel of 6 experts and discuss the questions how we're going to see the renewable can play a major role in the region, and what could be the determining the factor in terms of how the renewable can take off in the region. So that is the basic structure we're going to have for this session. And so without overdue, and would like to introduce first speaker, and Ms. Hannah Murdoch. And she's currently renewable energy analysis at RUN21. She's a research team, and within the research team doing the research coordination and analysis for a global status report. And she's also leading the RUN21's energy efficiency data collection efforts. So which means that she knows both sides, renewable and efficiency, which is a perfect combination actually. And in terms of achieving the sustainable goal. And so she's going to give us a presentation on the status and outlooks for renewable energy development in Asia. Yeah, Mr. Murdoch, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As he mentioned, I'm the renewable energy analyst at RUN21, and my primary work is on the global status report, which we just launched last week at the Clean Energy Ministerial in San Francisco. And so I'm going to be presenting some of the findings from that report. Just for some background, for those of you that aren't familiar, RUN21 is the global multi-stakeholder network for renewable energy. We're focused on the rapid uptake of renewable energy worldwide, and we're made up of international organizations, NGOs, government, science and academia, and industry. Our reports are we've been producing the Global Status Report annually since 2005, so this is our 11th edition. We're covering all renewable energy technologies and the power, transport, and heating and cooling sectors. While there's a wealth of data in the report itself, there's also more country-specific data online in our Renewables interactive map. And the Global Status Report is actually an effort of our community. For GSR 2016, we had over 700 experts contributing. They're focused on renewable energy, energy efficiency, and energy access. And these experts contribute by giving their time and contributing data and participating in the peer review process. So this collaborative effort has resulted in the Global Status Report becoming the most frequently referenced publication on renewable energy worldwide. So turning now to the results of the report. 2015 was an extraordinary year for renewables, and we saw the largest global capacity additions to date. There were 147 gigawatts added in 2015 in power capacity, 38 gigawatts in gigawatt thermal and heat capacity, and biofuel production also increased. What's important to note here is that this all occurred despite ongoing fossil fuel subsidies and the continuing tumbling global fossil fuel prices, as well as other various challenges for renewables, including the integration of rising shares of renewables, political and policy instability, and regulatory barriers and fiscal constraints. Renewable energy provided an estimated 19.2% of global final energy consumption, and the share of modern renewable energy increased to 10.3%. Renewable energy comprises nearly 24% of global electricity demand and an estimated 4% of global energy demand for road transport and 8% of global heat demand. In the report, we also present an overview of the renewable energy champions in different areas. This slide is showing the annual investment, capacity additions, and production champions with the top 5 countries listed. And as you can see, the ones that are highlighted show that there's quite a big representation of Asian countries in the top 5. And similarly for total capacity, there's also quite a heavy representation of Asian countries. Particularly, you see China popping up as a number 1 in several categories. And while we all are covering all renewable energy technologies, I'm just going to cover a few for the sake of time. Looking first at solar PV, the market was up 25% over 2014 for a record 50 gigawatts, lifting the global total to 227 gigawatts. The annual market in 2015 was nearly 10 times that of a decade earlier, and emerging markets on all continents contributed significantly to the growth, but this was largely driven by the increasing cost competitiveness of solar PV. In Asia, there was 60% of global additions, and China added 15.2 gigawatts, and Japan with 11 gigawatts, both making it into the top 3 countries. More in this region, the Philippines and Thailand added more than 100 gigawatts. By 2015, Asia accounted for 87% of global module production, and China makes up 2/3 of the world total. Finally, China's significant off-grid solar PV installations since 2012 contributed to its achievement of 100% electrification. In terms of wind, globally a record 63 gigawatts was added for a total of about 433 gigawatts. Non-OECD countries were responsible for the majority of installations led by China, and new markets emerged across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Asia was again the largest market for the 8th consecutive year, adding 53% of capacity. There's little quantitative information on distributed renewable energy, but the data that is existing shows that these markets are significant. 17% of the global population still lacks access to electricity, making up approximately 1.2 billion people. And 38% of the global population lack access to clean cooking. The vast majority of this population is in Asia-Pacific region and in sub-Saharan Africa. DRE systems have a large role to play here, and DRE solar PV systems in particular have continued to flourish, representing an annual market of $300 million in 2015. Asia also includes the primary markets for renewable-based mini-grids in operation, particularly in Bangladesh, Cambodia, China, and India. Global new investment in renewables climbed to a record $285.9 billion in 2015, not including large hydro projects. This was an increase of 5% from 2014. In 2015, for the first time in history, developing countries surpassed developed economies in terms of total investment in renewable power and fuels. China played a dominant role, increasing its production, its investment by 17% to $102.9 billion. And this accounts for 36% of the global total. In the Asia-Pacific region, investment declined slightly, but remained higher than most other regions, and nearly surpassed that of Europe. By the end of 2015, the vast majority of countries worldwide had renewable energy policies and targets. There were 173 countries with renewable energy targets, and at least 146 countries with renewable energy policies. But what you can see is that the majority is still focused on the power sector, with 114 countries with renewable energy power support policies, and 66 countries in the transport sector, and just 21 countries in heating and cooling. Also in 2015, the emphasis on energy efficiency increased at all levels of government as well as in the private sector. There's growing recognition worldwide that energy efficiency can play a key role in reducing energy-related emissions, and that it can provide multiple economy-wide benefits. By the end of 2015, at least 146 countries had renewable energy policies, and at least 128 countries had renewable energy targets. Also, out of the 189 countries that submitted INDCs for COP21, 147 mentioned renewable energy, while 167 mentioned energy efficiency. So in conclusion, despite a dramatic decline in fossil fuel prices, and despite 4 times higher fossil fuel subsidies than renewable energy support in general, the world saw the largest global capacity additions from renewables to date. Renewables expanded in all sectors, though deployment in transport and heating and cooling needs to be accelerated. Renewables are now established as a mainstream source of energy worldwide. The share of renewables in total final energy consumption, however, is not growing fast enough. If climate commitments are to be reached, the majority of remaining fossil fuel reserves need to stay in the ground, and renewable and energy efficiency efforts need to be scaled up dramatically. To accelerate the transition to a healthier, more secure, and climate-safe future, renewable energy use needs to be maximized, and a smarter, more flexible system should also be put in place that accommodates both centralized and decentralized, as well as community-based generation. And with that, I'd like to invite you all to join the REN21 network. You can find all of our publications online free for download, as well as our data and infographics and videos. You can also learn how to contribute to the next edition of the Global Status Report, GSR 2017, particularly as we're continuously looking to strengthen our coverage in Asia. Also, we have the key findings of the Global Status Report located at the tables in the back, but you can download the full report online. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miss Murdoch, and for your wonderful presentation and giving us, the overall what's happening and globally, but as well as in Asia for renewable energy development. And we can see this the first year, 2015, is the it first year that's investment in developing countries, and surpassed the investment in developing countries. As you can see, the market has been dramatically changed from developed country to developing countries for various reasons. And one of those very obviously, the energy demand is here, especially in this region, in Asia and especially Southeast Asia. And a lot of capacity has been already built in the region, and China is taking lead. But gradually, you can see more and more coming in other countries. So we are very convinced, actually, this is the region that's where you can see the outlook. And with that, I would like to invite next speaker, and Mr. Nicholas Wigner. And Mr. Wigner is Associate Program Officer at International Renewable Energy Agency, and he's located in Bonn office, at Innovation and Technology Center. And he's a part of the Renewable Energy Roadmap program. This is within IRENA, has been contributing to the global renewable energy roadmap development, and as well as the country report as well. And prior to working at IRENA, and Nicholas worked in renewable energy consulting firms in California, as well as doing research in Germany too later on, in German Institute for Economic Research and Vorholt Institute. So with that, I would like Mr. Wigner is going to give us a talk about the renewable energy outlook in the region, and based on the global study that's done by IRENA. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Yang, and thank you to ADB for hosting this wonderful event. I think Hannah did a very great job of sort of giving us a perspective of where we stand today. So what I will be doing is presenting very briefly to you findings from our recently released Roadmap for Renewable Energy Future, which has a time frame to 2030. It's quite in depth, so I will be very limited in what I show you. But I welcome you to go visit our website. We really touch on a whole number of issues. And then I will show some first insights from a report that we're working on for the ASEAN region based on our remap framework. If you don't know the International Renewable Energy Agency, I don't blame you. We are a young international organization. Just this last month, we turned 5 years old. So we've been in operation for 5 years, but despite that short time period, we have 176 member countries or states in accession, so the fastest growing international organization ever. We have 3 offices, one in Abu Dhabi, where my colleague Jan is based, an office in Bonn focused on innovation and technology, that's where I'm based, and a New York liaison office. I work for the REMAP program. REMAP is our roadmaps program within IRENA, specifically our flagship publication, the Roadmap for Renewable Energy Future. And it looks at the entire energy system, and it has a time frame to 2030, and we look at possible pathways to originally to operationalize the Sustainable Energy for All initiative, the third objective, which was doubling the share of renewable energy. That's since sort of been refocused to the SDG 7 when that was agreed last year. We look at renewable potential across the entire energy systems, and not just in the power sector, but we look at the other supply sector, which is district heat, and we also look at end uses. And it is unique, and that is not a desktop study. We actively engage and work with 40 countries around the world, representing 80% of global energy use, and we assess with a framework that we've developed, a reference case and an accelerated renewables case for those countries. And you can see them highlighted in green. Some of the key findings, we work backwards from the aim of doubling renewable energy. So you probably saw earlier that we were at about 19% renewable energy. A few years ago, we were at 18% in 2010. So we see roughly a 0.15 or 0.2% increase globally in renewable energy share per year. So this has to be substantially increased if our aim is to get to 36%, which is a doubling. We say we need to increase deployment yearly on average during this period, 6-fold. So we need to see over a percentage point a year. And why would we do that? Well, there's a whole variety of reasons. Most importantly, it's actually the cheapest pathway. Savings exceed cost 4 to 15 times. This depends on how you assess externalities. So this is looking at the macroeconomic perspective, not just energy service cost. But the savings are substantial. A lot of that is driven by air pollution, reductions in air pollution, but also climate. If you combine accelerated deployment of renewables with energy efficiency, you set the world on a pathway to 2 degrees or below. And we show that that's also really the 2 key technologies that the world needs to focus on for climate. But you need to focus more than just on the power sector. The power sector is hugely important, exciting things are happening, but you also need to look at the heating and cooling, as was mentioned in the transport sector as well. If we look in 2030 what the energy mix could entail, so this is in a high renewables case, we see that actually it's still very much predominantly focused on end-use sectors, so that's these heating, cooling, and transport energy demands. You do see significant growth in the power sector and in the contribution of renewables that come from renewable power. If you look at today, it's under 20%. But we see that double, so the growing importance of the power sector is very important. But the power sector only represents around 20% of energy demand, so you really have to address the growing energy demand in these end-use sectors. And that will be met through a combination of technologies. There'll be a lot of bioenergy. It already represents over 3/4 of renewable energy, but you'll see very strong growth in technologies such as solar thermal and the use of electrification that can shift some of that demand. That's the sector coupling that I think was also mentioned earlier. If we see some of the technologies that grow, we've selected some here. We've seen, I think, progress since 2014. If we look at solar, we were at 175 then, we're at 225 or so today. We have 60 more gigabytes of wind. But you still need to see very significant growth in all of these technologies, more so than that's happening in the reference case, so that we kind of expect market developments or what governments expect. So we need to significantly accelerate our deployment in all of these. This will also include electric vehicles, include liquid biofuels, which are crucial for some transport modes. And we also see strong growth in solar thermal, just a selection of technologies. And if we look where we are today, where we will head under sort of a business as usual, we call the reference case, or remap, and then we look at additional options, you see that there's really a wide range between countries, but they generally fall in this 20 to 40% renewable energy share. So most countries achieve significantly more than what they expect to achieve based on the assessment that we have done with them under a reference case. So the yellow portions of this graph are developments that are expected, and the green portions are where countries realistically think that they can accelerate renewables in their economies by that period. And then the hatched areas are actually things that we think are additionally possible but require some breakthrough technologies and significantly more policy action. And as I mentioned, that the associated costs, there are some if you look purely at the energy service cost. So if you look at the system cost of the energy system, you will see an incremental cost of around $290 billion in 2030 for the level of energy service. But when you start to quantify the benefits that are associated with that through reduced outdoor air pollution, to reduce indoor air pollution, which is also crucial, that includes the phase out and replacement of traditional uses of bioenergy, of course, and benefits depending on how you assess the social cost of carbon. You see that even if you take very conservative low-end estimates, that the savings are significantly higher, over $1 trillion per year in 2030. And so we identified a few key action areas. In the report, we go into much more detail about these, but if you broadly define, there's 5. One is to correct for market distortions, to level the playing field. This relates to many things, but one is we need to internalize those external costs, and however that can be done, there's a variety of policy issues, but those are currently not priced into the market. In fact, in many cases, it's the opposite. There are subsidies that enable use of dirty fuels. And we need to reform power markets. Power markets need to be able to cope and need to be able to incorporate this revolution we're seeing in renewable power. In many cases, they're static markets. There's not really fair competition in those markets. We need to introduce greater flexibility into the power system. This is very important. We're seeing a boom in variable renewable energy sources, solar and wind. These have to be incorporated into the power market. There's a variety of flexibility measures that one can take, from storage to demand side to greater interconnection with regions. This is very important. We need to look at developing heating and cooling solutions, particularly for the industry, for manufacturing. This is a key source of growing energy demand, and there are renewable solutions that exist, and these need to be supported in countries. We need to address the issue of transport. Transport's a third of global energy. I welcome anybody who is here on Friday to come to a presentation we'll give about this topic. And of course, we need to look at the bioenergy. Bioenergy is all around us. It's currently used in massive quantities around the world, not just for basic purposes, but also in industry and more advanced applications. There's the possibility to significantly scale up sustainable, non-food related energy crops to meet our growing energy demand. I'd like to briefly, in 1 minute and 20 seconds, provide some first insights from a renewable energy outlook that we're doing in ASEAN. We're working together with the Asian Center for Energy, ASEAN Center for Energy, and working with experts from the 10 ASEAN countries, including this country and the Philippines. The aim is to identify the technological pathways to achieving a renewable energy share that they've aimed for 2025. That is 23%. Under a reference case scenario, they will achieve only about 16%, so we're trying to operationalize this remaining 7%, and we will present the findings in September in Myanmar. And we see why ASEAN, because they have significantly rising energy demand. It's going to double in many countries. It's going to quadruple or more. They have significant growth in power, but also in industry. Industry growth is really growing quite astonishingly, so there needs to be technological solutions that address that, and we think renewables can do that. And if we look at some of the options that we've identified, we see that in some countries there's a very heavy emphasis on power technologies. In other countries it's much more of an emphasis on end-use heating and transport technologies. And this gives you a perspective of where those additional renewable potentials lie, in what sector and in what technology. We see in general obviously a very strong emphasis on solar PV, but also on bioenergy technologies in industry and in buildings, because much of this area of the world is still very reliant on traditional uses of bioenergy. And if we see what that entails in terms of costs versus savings, as we quantify it, if we look at energy system costs and then the associated reductions in air pollution, indoor, outdoor, and CO2 benefits, we see that in all cases the benefits far outweigh the costs. This is the average assessment of both the low and the high. And so with that, it was quick, but I welcome you to come talk to me afterwards if you have more questions, or to visit our website, or email me. You'll see my email there, and I can provide some more details. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nick, and for a wonderful presentation to give us the outlook, what's it going to look like, and the renewable energy roadmap, and also the show that there's technologies available there, and the cost is very compelling. The pictures is conceiving to 4 to 15 times, and if you put the incentives right, and also the value, the benefits. And also this highlights it's not only power sector, but also the other sectors as well. It's cooling, heating, and transport as well. Especially the later ones need to more emphasized. And countries, the roles different. You can, from 10%, 90%, and the renewable shares by 2030, according to your study. And for Asia as well, especially for ASEAN, this is to achieve the 23% by 2025 target, collective target set, and what's the missing gap? How do you fill up the gap? So this is thank you very much once again, Nick. And next speaker, I would like to introduce Mr. Iban Vandril, and from Morton McDonald. And Iban is a chartered energy engineer and advisor with a wide variety of experience. And Iban is currently holding various roles of leading business development of wind power business in Asia and the Pacific. And the key project experience he had in the past many years, decades, probably even necessarily include his leadership technical development of renewable energy strategies in pioneering renewable energy cities like Master City, actually where the IRENA, the headquarters, is based. And leadership on the technical advisory work to the Department for Energy of South Africa to procure several gigawatts of solar and wind power projects. He organized and delivered several workshops on renewable energy technical and dissemination to more than 100 local banks in the Southeast Asia region, and also led work on first of a kind utility scale renewable energy projects in various countries in Asia. And with that, I would like to invite Ivan to give us a talk on the outlook for wind development in Asia based on his past experience.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hi to everyone. I think my 10 minutes today is more about trying to contextualize the outlook of renewable energy, in particular in the ASEAN region, and in particular in the wind sector. Okay. I'll give a little bit of update, if you like, with respect to what we have seen in terms of what projects being developed, and with respect to the targets in the various countries in the ASEAN. But the key focus of this 10 minutes, if you like, will be more on trying to understand which has been the challenges that this industry has faced for the last 7-8 years, and trying to understand how this has been managed and how can help, if you like, to continue deploying more wind power in the ASEAN. So that's a couple of points I'll be talking first. So the overview, and then the key challenges, which we identify as these four. There might be others, but I think it's worth to touch on these four ones. Well, I work for Mott MacDonald. I mean, that experience has been gathered through working through this company. The bottom line here is basically we've been working various infrastructure projects, in particular focus on renewable energy and power, and in particular doing quite a lot of work in the Southeast Asian region with respect to wind. So we're involved in most of the wind projects in Thailand and in various projects as well in the Philippines and also now in Indonesia. So to touch more specifically about what's really going on in the ASEAN is, well, there's some figures here in terms of targets. The targets are not extremely ambitious compared, for example, to all the targets or the figures that we see, for example, in countries like in India and in China. But since basically this industry started, if you like, about 7-10 years ago, I think it's still quite positive. So, for example, in Thailand, we see, for example, at the moment it's about 220 megawatt of installed capacity. And there's around 900 megawatts in the pipeline. So, maybe in some time there's an ability to actually meet that specific target. In the Philippines, again, we've seen, we understand it's more than 400 megawatt of installed capacity, and that will very much depend on the further allocations that the government give to this particular technology. Vietnam has shown major challenges. There's significant projects in the pipeline, but again, there's a number of uncertainties with respect to the institutional ability to actually deploy these projects. In Indonesia, we see nice things moving forward. See the first projects are being under project finance, and I think there will be interesting stories in Indonesia, given the fact that PLN sees some projects to be economical, given the high electricity cost if you don't take into consideration the subsidies, for example. So. These are the kind of general picture in the ASEAN, but perhaps now I think it's worth to touch a bit on the key challenges we have seen that the industry has faced for the last few years. So, for example, we see in Thailand, as better sites have been identified, now we see that the projects are going on very, very height, basically turbines. So, meaning that, again, that results in higher costs, much more complexity for procuring these turbines. Now, that's not the case for all the countries in the ASEAN, but it's the case, for example, of Thailand, and potentially in the future in other countries where they have more moderate wind resource. We've seen, for example, the industry have faced issues like, for example, turbine component manufacturing quality control issues. These things have been addressed. It was more at the beginning in the industry where some of the manufacturers, they have experience deploying the technologies in the region. So they subcontract local companies that have some challenges. So I think that's been kind of now sorted now. But we see still challenges, for example, with the selection of the right turbine class. in particular in countries like the Philippines or also Vietnam, because of course the weather conditions change very rapidly, and with that change also the requirements for classifying these turbines. We've seen foundation challenges. We've seen situations where there's been failure of design. There's been retrofitting of a full foundation in some of the projects. But again, we see that the industry now is really moving to support with international knowledge, reviewing those foundations designed and try to bring it to international standards. In terms of specialist skills, very much we see in the region there is a significant amount of local skill that basically helps to deploy most of these projects. So in fact, I see very much international support in areas, of course, turbine supply, but then if you like, for example, when supporting developers to structure these projects or to procure the actual contracts, and we also see a level of international support with respect to wind resource assessment. But with this in mind, the significant amount of companies that they leverage from the capability, if you like, more in other sectors into the wind, in particular in the new countries that are developing these wind projects. One of the key issues, it could be self-evident, but in fact that has been one of the critical issues when finding showstoppers for projects. So really, community buy-in has been a critical point, and it could be a major barrier for deploying some of these projects, and we've seen that a key issue. So for example, we see that the industry now is actually involving more upfront engagement, explanation of the technologies, for example, driven mechanisms and community support funds. There's a number of mechanisms that are being put in place to try to avoid situations where you have a showstopper, if you like, at the early stage of project development. One very critical point as well in terms of appropriate regulation. I mean, that's been, again, as the industry starts, then moves forward, we see that there is, if you like, an uncertainty or lack of clarity in a number of regulation points. So for example, we see things like radar noise, visual impact, shadow flicker. So one of the things that can happen, for example, is all of a sudden you find yourself as a developer and you find a new regulation in place, for example, the recent setback distances in Thailand, that then you need to comply with. And your project has been structured and designed not meeting these requirements. So I believe the developers, in some cases, they're really trying to be proactive and anticipate any, if you like, lack of clarity on certain regulations. Another critical point in the ASEAN region is that dispatchability. I mean, that concept could be quite, if you like, clear from a perspective of developers in certain areas, for example, in Europe or in America, where, for example, there is much more established grid networks and allow for an easy penetration, if you like, of renewable energy. What we've been finding in the ASEAN is that the utilities have been, working alongside the developers on the go, if you like. So there hasn't been like a very strong, proper pre-plan of the grid utility prior to renewable energy penetration. And that what it creates, of course, creates a bit of an imbalance with respect to, what you can inject, with respect to risks of curtailment, and with respect to your ability to understand whether your renewable energy injected or wind power injected into the grid will not be curtailed or not. So that's been, of course, is a very important point. I think the more work is done in this particular area, I think the more will help to deploy more capacity going forward in the ASEAN region. So just to round up a little bit, a few points. The first one, maybe just to mention that, development of wind power is not rocket science. It's certainly something that has been deployed in various other regions, and this region is very active. But the projects remain complex, and there is a significant amount of newcomers into developing these projects, leveraging from other, for example, business sets. So there is significant amount of careful you need to have with respect to the regulation and trying to anticipate those changes as they occur, on the one hand. Technology selection, that's going to be also quite interesting, in particular as the good sites have been identified, and you have to move forward with, if you like, less sites with less resource, and then you have to go with a bit more, stretching your technology selection. And of course that relates to tariff as well, so that could actually even push the tariff as well. So the sourcing of the skills has been one of the areas where we've seen this quite significant amount of options there, if you like. Having said that, we've seen also a level of concentration, for example, in certain services, for example, for balance of plant contractors. So there's quite a significant amount of concentration of firms that are offering this service. So it's important that as the market matures, there is much more ability to deploy more options for contracting, and therefore giving perhaps a lower price, a more competitive price. And of course that relates to project finance and how the project finance has been resulting in this region. And we've seen something very interesting. We were used to more international project finance. We see now here in the region a significant amount of local finance, for example, in countries like Thailand and also in the Philippines. And then we see, for example, that the lenders have been coping with that, project finance, the perceptions change, models for contract have changed depending on their risk perception, but I believe the lenders are moving forward with much more confidence going forward, which again will help to release more capacity. And finally, I think it's important to make sure that the region also leverage from all the knowledge that has been acquired in the wind industry worldwide through, for example, roles like owners and lenders. That's pretty much it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ivan, for a wonderful presentation and to talk about wind power development and in the region. And next, I would like to introduce the three panelists sitting on my left side, and each of them going to give like 5 minutes talk roughly, and then we're open the floor for discussion. And first, I would like to introduce Mr. Vincent Chow, and he's Secretary General of the Asia Pacific Biogas Alliance, and also Director of International Clean Energy Sustainability and the Network. So, having started the Biogas Forum in 2009, Vincent has been actively promoting development of biogas in Asia and encouraging its adoption as a waste management and an alternative energy solution. And he's going to share with us on how we could overcome the challenges we are facing and to unlock the potential of a biogas in the region. And the next panelist, the second one on my left, is Dr. Anka Shah Corey, and is the expert of renewable energy technology and the market. He led several projects on development assessment and market analysis and business model and capacity building. And over past 28 years and in 20 countries. So very good, wide range of experience. Some her current assignment as a team leader, including renewable energy development in Afghanistan. And she took the lead in drafting Afghanistan national renewable energy policy and developing strategy for implementation. And he's also involving in the team in the supporting the system energy development for all, and in the countries in Africa too. So I would like to introduce the last one. It's a panelist. It's Su Fang Zhang. It's a professor at the University of Economics and Management and the director of Institute for Low Carbon Energy in North China Electrical Power University. And Professor Zhang is currently leading several research projects on China's wind power and solar power policies. And so she's going to share with us and on the experience in China and huge, big renewable energy pioneers, but also facing quite a bit of challenge at the current stage. So with that, I would like to invite Vincent first to give us a more talk.
Thank you, Yong, for the introduction, and thank you, ADB Secretary, for inviting me to be here. I don't really know why I'm up here actually. I'm not an academic, I'm not a researcher, I'm just an entrepreneur that really thinks biogas is making money. Just before I start actually, just a show of hands, how many of you are actually involved in bioenergy at the moment? Okay, fantastic. The rest of you can leave and come back in 5 minutes. Thank you very much. I first like I said, I'm actually an entrepreneur, and I first came across biogas about 5-6 years ago when a very big Malaysian conglomerate came up, a project engineer there, came up to me and said, "Hey Vincent, I think I want to do a proof of concept for my company, and I need some money to do a biogas upgrading project." I said, "Okay, fine, how much do you need?" So we sat down, started doing some calculations, and after we did the calculation over beer on a napkin like this, he decided he doesn't need my money anymore, and managed to convince his management to put up the money on himself. Basically, I'm saying that biogas brings money. The outlook, just some stats. The World Bioenergy Association estimates that 25% of the natural gas demand can be met by biogas. That's 6% of global energy use. Unfortunately, just the previous presentation, there's only 1% there for biogas, right? So there's another 5% out there that nobody wants. I'm from Singapore, a small little island, so not much biomass potential there. So we look at our neighbors. Just looking at palm oil mills, homing, sewage, and municipal solid waste. In our neighbor in Indonesia, there's 4.35 billion cubic meters of biomethane that can produce every year that nobody wants. Street value, $1.53 billion. In Malaysia, 1 billion from homing, sewage, and MSW. There's another 3 billion cubic meters of biomethane. Biomethane is the same as natural gas, by the way. That is available that nobody is really doing anything about right now. That's another $1 billion. I'm not sure about you, but if there's $2.5 billion out there, I want to see how I can get it, So, why it matters and why biogas matters? There's various studies that happen. Biogas in transportation sector reduces greenhouse gas emissions by up to 84%. And a lot of this, I'm not sure if you even know, is actually released into the atmosphere right now, and nobody's really doing anything about it. Take Malaysia, for example. They produce about 100 million tons of FMP a year, and that releases 18.75 billion kg of CO2 equivalent every year into the atmosphere, and nobody's really taking note of it, nobody is really doing anything about it, and this is something that needs to change. I'm supposed to focus on outlook, so right now, just a quick update on what's happening around this region. Thailand is by far, in Southeast Asia, the more advanced country when it comes to biogas development. They have a total of 1,727 plants, producing 367 megawatts of power from biogas. Unfortunately, Malaysia and Indonesia doesn't have much to talk about, but there's a lot of potential. And I think what we are looking forward to is regulations on the Ministry of Agriculture, which will dictate that all palm oil mills will have to cover up their homemade lagoons to produce biogas. If that comes into place, we can use the biogas, upgrade it for biomethane, or use it for power generation if it's near enough to the grid. And this is something that we look forward to doing. On to some challenges. I only have 30 seconds left. It's education, actually. A lot of people are not aware of the potential for biogas, and that's why they're not doing anything about it. I remember 6 years ago, I went to a ministry, I will not name the country, sat down with the ministry that's in charge of renewable energy, and they asked me this question: what is biogas? And this is the ministry that's supposed to be in charge of renewable energy, and that just got me really thinking. A lot more needs to be done. If you go up to a palm oil owner and you tell them, hey, you need to do biogas, they'll give you one puzzled look on your face and say, how is that going to increase my CPOU? It won't, but it will help you make additional streams of revenue, and this is what our association is trying to do. We are promoting education in this sector, and another thing that we are promoting is safety. Not sure if you're aware, there are very, very ugly news when it comes to biogas. 30 people died from one plant explosion, 7 people died trying to clean up all this lack of safety, lack of standards, and this is something that we as an association is trying to address. Thank you. I think we're out of time.
Thank you very much. And then second panelist, please. Sorry.
Thank you. I would place my comments on two countries in the region. One is India, one is Afghanistan. India, because I come from India, so I have first-hand experience of Indian renewable energy sector. In Afghanistan, because the last 2 years I've been involved in working in Afghanistan in the renewable energy sector, and it's fascinating to work there. Now, on these two countries, I have also chosen India to, as a case in point, to talk about the challenges of renewable energy development in the country, and I have chosen Afghanistan as prospects of renewable energy in the region. So let's first talk about, you'll be surprised to know that India and Afghanistan, there's only 1.45 hours flight. That close to each other. But India culturally represents and politically also represents the South Asian region, and Afghanistan represents Central and West Asian region. So, and this in a way gives a very subtle difference between the two countries and how they approach their the renewable energy development. Having said so, it's also true that from Afghanistan, India, for all practical purposes, is the nearest destination for everything, including wedding shopping. So, medical tourism, wedding shopping, and renewable energy, they both, India is the natural destination for Afghanistan because the flight is only 1.45 hours, less than 2 hours long. Anyway, coming back to the point, India, you all must have heard at least the so-called success, I'm using the word so-called because it's a so-called success story of deploying solar after having deploying wind at the megawatt scale level. So, you have these numbers going up very fast on the utility scale solar. But then when you also talk about all the good points in the utility scale, whether in terms of streamlining of the industry, streamlining of the supply chain, the cost reductions which in our own life, the life cycle cost analysis that we used to do when we were students, and suddenly the reduction curve has actually proven for itself in India. But all these good points put together still are not getting translated into the rural off-grid distributed sector. So when we start talking about rooftop as a distributed sector, the next market, we are still not getting around the safety issue, the aesthetics issue, the implementation issue, the supply chain issues. We are still picking the low-hanging fruit in terms of picking up the easiest available routes which belong to the government institutions and putting solar panels and which ultimately are towards meeting the target. So the challenges from the, and all said and done, this solar is still not a mature market in India because technologies don't mature overnight. Technologies don't mature in 5 years' time. So from the lenders' perspective, whether they are overseas lenders or Indian lenders, the national banks and the areas and all the other power finance corporations, they still don't have benchmarks on which to place their risks when they are lending for solar projects, although the market is growing very fast. So this was my story on India about the challenges. Let me now go to Afghanistan and talk about prospects. I don't remember the figures, but Afghanistan is one of the lowest in terms of energy access, in terms of energy consumption, in terms of energy, GDP, everything, all the indicators that you talk about, Afghanistan probably is the lowest. But Afghanistan is also poised for growth and stability. And growth means economic growth, and the economic growth means basically energy as a fuel. And that's why Afghanistan today, in the last 2 years I've seen, since I've been involved, Afghanistan is coming out with all its policies in the right direction: renewable energy policy, tariff policy, feed-in policy, energy policy, and even energy efficiency policy. When energy efficiency, even the fraction of the EE is not yet familiar with Afghanis beyond the nodal ministries. But when you talk about prospects, it's really an open slate because on one hand, Afghanistan is extremely rich in resources, starting from geothermal to solar to wind.